What's up, Strifix here, bringing another video here. We're going to be talking about TvZ, and in this TvZ we're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you the two variations, the way you're supposed to play it, and so from there, and then we're going to talk about a little bit more outside of it into a unit tester of some of the situations of how to play the TvZ. So I'm going to cover the start, the mid concept, and the late game concept under basically play and bio. And I'm going to talk about a way to make it easier for you in the way that at the highest level you're supposed to kind of play it to a certain extent from there. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to actually, for the sake of this, turn the camera off, guys, so we can see this. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about what is considered what I would consider probably the most standard TvZ builder, which I would consider the economical, safe kind of game with some timings in it. Now, there's different variations of this build, and this is the one with the starport. So it's a 3cc starport build. You can get the starport a little bit quicker with certain variations, or get the two banshees out a little bit quicker with cloak or without cloak. There's a lot of different variations, but I will say, like, the one I used here is the most economical / safe, and I'll talk about some of them small variations if you want to cut corners or you see things that you won't have any trouble with. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So we're going to do a standard SCV here, and this first SCV that pops out is going to be the one that builds your supply depot. From there. All right, and so this one will build the supply depot. And once he finishes the supply depot, remember to keep making SCVs. Once he builds the supply depot, we're going to put down a barracks. Now, you want to keep making SCVs one at a time, especially at the earlier stages. And then I try to keep like two queued up, the second one queued up. So what we're going to do is, once this finishes, we're going to drop a barracks as soon as possible, and then we're going to take an SCV off the minerals to build the gas. So here comes the barracks. You're going to see me instantly take an SCV that finished returning minerals or off the minerals and put down that gas as soon as possible. If you delay this gas right after you start your barracks, it will slow down your Reaper. And getting this Reaper out is your information / scouting Reaper. From there, it also is able to defend the early lings without speed if they try to come across really early. Your one Reaper is going to pretty much be very crucial. That's why when you hear people say, oh, well, you lost a first Reaper, you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, it's not worth, even if they get one drone or something to that extent. If they lose to Reaper, it's not worth it, because they lose all their vision, all their scouting, all the knowledge ends right then of what the Zerg could be doing. So basically, you're playing in the blind, and you might not adjust quick enough depending on what they're doing, to alleviate some of them earlier builds they can do. All right, so we're going to keep pumping SCVs all the way up to 19. And that is right when the barracks pretty much about finishes. And what you're going to do is, when this gas finishes, we're going to take an SCV. Now, I take this SCV that's going to come out, well, 17, it'll be 18 once it pops out, and I rally it to this gas. If you get the build order down, you notice it's going to finish near the same time. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take an SCV, one SCV off the minerals here. Instead of having to grab two, I can grab one SCV. You're going to see me grab it right there. And I'm going to put it already on the gas, and then this one will go into gas, and we got 3 on there. And then we're just going to rally SCVs to the minerals or the next SCV to the minerals, this next one. This next one will go to the natural. So this one that pops out on 19 is going to be the one that makes the command center down here, because you're going to make an orbital. Once the barracks finishes, orbital and Reaper. You want to try to do them simultaneous, but if your barracks finishes a little bit sooner than the SCV popping out on 19, you're going to make that Reaper. If the SCV comes out a little bit before the Reaper, then you'll make the orbital. So just know that these should be close to simultaneously as possible. If you have to prioritize and they finish at the same time, I would say orbital and then Reaper. Even though it don't matter. I mean, getting a Reaper out a little bit earlier, that half a second might make a difference, depending on how quick somebody is. But you can get them near simultaneously. They finish near the same time, orbital, Reaper. And now here's the interesting part. So the SCV that finishes the barracks is going to scout to the natural, and then we're going to talk about it when it gets to the natural. So if you're looking at this build order, you might want to write some of it down or pay attention, or you can grab a decent replays and get a general idea of someone who does this. I will be doing something similar to this, either on stream or recordings on YouTube, of going from like a silver to diamond with just macro. And you're going to see me do this without very much pressure, but you'll see this build a lot. It might be a good video for it. So this one's going to go to minerals and rally. If you don't want to shift to the minerals, or you find it too hard or too task heavy, then it's okay if it sits here till you get 400. Get that down as soon as possible. This supply is going to kick in, so make sure you get the time. And I'd say right here, this first 2 minutes and 30 seconds is very crucial in the tear and build order to help you hold off certain things and have the supply kick in. It's a fairly tight build order. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build a supply depot on 100 here. So we're going to take that SCV. We're going to build that supply depot to finish up that wall. And now, another thing I'll tell you, it's up to you if you want to put the barracks right here and then shift it over when you go to build your reactor that we will be building here shortly. All right, so what we're going to do is SCV, mule, then we're going to build a marine. And then what we're going to do, we're going to rally this next SCV that comes out. So on 22, we're going to build a factory. So 22, a factory. All right, so let's talk about the scout. Now this is AI, but let's say it's a person and you're at a plat league or however from there. I don't know, even in gold, pretty much will be this way. So what you're going to do is, if you see that this hatchery here, I mean, there's a few little tricks that could try to perform, but the big thing is it a 12 pool or not. But this hatchery here, or a pool first, this hatchery here tells me right off the bat, when I get here and it's finished and you see creep, or it's finished, let's just say when you get here with this SCV, if it's in the green and they're doing, let's just say they know a build order, or the most efficient opening for Zerg, which is hatch first on 16 or 17, whichever they do it on. The other one is a 16 pool, you know, got 12 pool, 14 pool, so on from there, gas, just variations based on what they do. The thing we want to do with the SCV is we want to see if they hatch first or not. Now, in this scenario, if I was in a game and I see this, this is a hatch first. It's already done. Technically done a little too early for a 16 hatch. Because usually when I get there, what happens is 16 hatch is just about to finish. It'll be in the green. If you get here, and this is the SCV that scouts after the barracks. And on most maps, this concept goes currently and in the past few seasons. If you get here and that hatch is near half or lower, you'll kind of get used to it. If it ain't in the green or near finishing, then this most likely was not a hatch first, or they don't know their build order, and maybe it is and it's not very good, but it is not a hatch first. And if it's not there and it's in the yellow or earlier, I would say keep your Reaper back. Do not go across with the Reaper, because it could be lings, it could be a pull first, and it could be going to come across. So that means economically you're going to be ahead. That means the Reaper needs to stay at home. We don't need to scout with the Reaper. We don't need to really do anything crazy early on. We need to make sure that the lings aren't waiting for a Reaper to move out and then they move out. So what you're going to do, you're going to hold the Reaper back, and you might move out with the first two Hellions. And if you choose to, you can take this SCV and kind of patrol if you want to. You can patrol it over here to see if he takes a third, however from there. But I would go ahead and consider the fact that it's probably lings. Now, if you see no hatchery, let's talk about if you don't see a hatchery, what you're probably getting is a one base, either one base bangling bust, one base roach, something crazy off of one base. Most likely roach, possibly roach, possibly ravager, possibly a proxy hatch, possibly, you know, something to that extent. So if you don't see one here, go up into the main with the SCV, try to get as much info as you can, as quickly as possible. And if you see like a bangling bust or roaches coming across, don't be scared to cancel this, bunker here, and do whatever you got to do to hold. Your build order should stay the same. You're going to gain more minerals back from the command center, and that's going to be your adjustment to hold on from there. And what you'll do, you'll bunker, factory, command center, however you need to do to adjust and survive. Out of those, I think the hardest to hold, honestly, is the Ravager one. and they'll have an Overlord, Ravager, and then they will buy all these down. Best case scenario, or if you hold really well, they might get both of these. If they don't get them, you're really far ahead for sure. Could be a proxy hatch and they're hiding it. That's why I say go all the way in. If you don't get that scout all the way in, I would assume that it's usually the majority of the time it's not a proxy hatch, especially if the units are there to meet your SCV very quickly. Then you kind of know something's up. So expect Bangling Bust, roaches, or possibly Ravagers of some sort with the roach setup. So, and pretty much the response is the same to all of those. Ravager, Bangling Bust, roach is, chances are you're not going to be able to hold it on the low ground. If they're on one base, you need to be able to hold it on the high ground. So don't be scared to cancel this to hold it. Zerg one base against a one base Terran will not work if you hold on very decent, or if you hold decently. All right, so moving on. So hatch first, Reaper goes across. Anything else, Reaper stays back. From that aspect, you're going to need it. We'll say this: if it's a Ravager all in or a Roach all in, do not get an add-on on this. Getting an add-on is very greedy and risky at the same time. Even against a Bangling Bust, you wouldn't get this reactor. You might be a bunker here, or you would try to wall it up however you need to, and then a bunker or something like that, split bunkers holding, and maybe even a double wall behind it or something to that extent. But basically, yeah, your setup is going to be get units out as quick as possible. And if you get a reactor, you're not going to get the units out quick enough if they execute it very well. If you get the reactor and you get stabilized, I mean, that's really good, but it's greedy. It's harder to hold that way. So Reaper's going to go across. So what we're going to do, we're going to keep SCVs pumping. You see we got the command center, we got the factory with that rallied SCV. So let's go back here a little bit because I really want to focus on the build order. There's I just talked about the scouting. Command center, as soon as you get the 400 minerals after the Reaper. And then once we start that, next 100 is going to supply depot, and then our marine, and then we're going to throw down a factory here with our 23rd supply here. So we're going to drop this down right here. This is a supply block, but really it looks supply block, but it's not. This is usually a good sign you're doing well. This is going to finish before the supply block actually occurs. There we go. And then right after this marine, do note if you're going across with your Reaper, right after this marine, try to get your reactor as soon as you can. Make sure you're getting it before you actually go in here and start trying to micro from there. Now, whatever you do, you don't have to do what I'm about to do, which is cut the lings. You'll see a lot of people cutting lings right here, causing damage. And what they're doing, they're trying to, at the highest level, that's a small little thing to force the Zerg to hopefully have to make more lings at some point. If he don't, then the Zerg has them 4 lings later on, or how many ever lings he makes later on. The main thing with the Reaper is to scout and get an idea of exactly what's going on. Is he drawing up? Is he building extra Zerglings? If you start to see like 8 to 10 Zerglings, then your Reaper can come back home and play it safe. That means you're going to be ahead in workers, which means most likely he's going to be aggressive, or he should be aggressive. If not, and you sit back and you come back home and he's not, that's still fine. Technically, you're ahead. Doesn't mean you'll win the game, but you're ahead, you're fine to come back. From there, Zerglings is so-so. When I start to see 8 to 10, I start really throwing up some flag points there, honestly. And I start heading back home. I keep my Hellions at home, and I get ready for some kind of attack coming from him. Or maybe I'll take the, basically I'm thinking there, if it's hatch first and he's making that many, then that's fine. I might micro here. I might try to get up here, but just be careful and go up into here and see if there's a roach warren or a bangling's nest or something like that, if I suspect something. From there, just be really careful if he makes them a lot of lings. If he's hatch first, most likely the speed isn't going to finish very early. It's going to finish around like 3:30. So if you're really good with your Reaper, you can stay across for about a good 3 minutes before coming back home. But that's a flag when you see more than 6 lings that something might be going on. So here we're going to micro. So what you're going to do, you're going to do a reactor here. So let's back up and look back at the build order. So there's the factory, there's the command center, no gas we're not going to take this second gas for a little while in this build. Now, there's builds where you take this probably like around now, if you're going to go with the fastest Banshee, a Banshee as quick as you can with Cloak, then you take this gas normally and delay in your third command center, which is super safe. It's super safe, and it also gives you the ability to harass with Cloak Banshees with the first two at an early stage. So basically this SCV will build that gas if I was doing that build, but here we're going to go with the faster third command center, which is going to be at 25 to 26 supply. We're going to throw a command center down here. So it's a greedy build, but a safe build at the same time. And there we go. We're doing it on 25. So there's the third command center. Make sure in this build order that you get this on 25 or 26. If you do not, you're going to find yourself supply blocked in this build, and you're going to have to build an additional supply depot between the one that after the one finishes here and before this one finishes. If you do it on time, you actually will not build any supply depots for a little while. All right, so there is the factory. We're going to do a swap, and I'm going to talk about a little bit of a version here. If you feel like the Zerg, you're safe with the one Reaper crossed. From there, you don't need to get the Hellions out as quick here. You can actually go ahead and put your starport down and delay these two Hellions slightly if you want to. That is something that I do based on what I see. If I feel like he's going to have quite a bit of lings or something to that extent, or I don't see a third by a certain time, then a lot of times I'm going to make sure I get the Hellions first. If I think it's Roaches, getting the starport quicker is actually a better option. If it's Lings or Banes, then of course the Hellions first are a better option. It only delays it a little bit, so the choice is up to you, but I did the safest version here, which is go with the Hellions first. Like I said, if I don't, I can throw the starport down ASAP, then make the two Hellions, and then get to Tech Lab. Whatever you do, make sure you do orbital this before you do any of that, and don't cut your orbital down and hurt yourself there economically. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to put down the starport, and then we're going to get this Tech Lab. This Tech Lab doesn't have to be this early. You can do it after you start the next two Hellions, the third and fourth Hellion. You're safe to make it then if you need to get it out a little bit quicker. Just see here, I can't make them two instantly. If I didn't have this, I could. Then I could start this Tech Lab, and it would still finish on time. All right, so there's the two more. We're going to move the barracks. We're going to switch it over and put the starport on it as well. And what we should be doing, we should be taking our second gas. I might have took it a little bit late. And the easiest way to do this is, if you see my setup here, is I don't have here, even though I think I take it here, is it's probably easier to take the gas here. Now, that's easier and more efficient sometimes, but honestly, the safer one is to take here, because if they do some all-in and they do this, it's going to delay your gas, and you're going to probably wish you had this one if you need to make out more Banshees for any reason to hold.
Add-on complete.
So there we go. We're going to move that. Notice my supply. This command center is going to come out on time and fill in the supply. That's the nice thing about this 3cc build. I'm only still on some 2 supply depots, and it's going to be like that all the way up to like the 4-minute mark. All right, so yeah, we're going to continue to talk about the build. I'm going to come back and I'll talk about some of this other stuff that we should be doing during it. The first thing is always to get down the build, and then you figure out the execution part and get used to it while doing the build. It's more important to execute the build than it is to do some of the macro. The main thing is the scout while you're executing the build. All right, so we're going to do this switch right here, and our command center finishes. I would get my Banshee out first. There, look how tight this is. Very nice, smooth build if you're doing it and get really good at it. And notice we're never cutting SCVs at all here. We're getting an orbital. We got the Banshee. We've got 2 more Hellions coming out. What you're going to do, you're going to make a total of 8 Hellions from that aspect. All right, so there we go. Notice we've taken our second gas. maybe after. Actually, that might be the right time. And let's see when we take this gas, because it really lined up really well.
Add-on complete.
Yep, so we're doing it after the starport starts. So what we're going to do, we have enough minerals to make the Banshee and the orbital here. Could do the orbital Banshee, and then notice here we don't have gas now, and we're going to need that additional gas for that second Banshee. And we also need the minerals to keep the Hellions coming out. So the concept of this build is Banshee, Hellions hold off Zerglings. It holds off the roaches. And that's the two things. If they all in you, it's going to be Banglings, roaches, or Ravagers. The Banshee counters the Ravagers and roaches. They still do okay against Lings, but obviously the Hellions are for the Lings from that aspect. So we're going to get a total of 8 Hellions. Make sure you focus on definitely keep making your workers. Watch replays to get decent benchmarks on where your workers should be. Now notice here, I really should have probably got stem till I started this second Banshee, and it's going to delay my second Banshee honestly here. So I do it a little bit wrong. Stem pack after you start second Banshee, then you do your stem pack, and then we're going to build 2 more barracks as we're making the second Banshee, and we're going to create a reactor on this factory for my second. Or yeah, the third barracks that's built. So here we go. If I didn't start stem, I could start another Banshee right here. There's a lot of variations where if you know you're safe, maybe it's better to get the stem a little bit earlier, so you can get your combat shields and stem for a decent follow-up if needed. But here we delay it. There's our second one, and you really don't want to delay it because you're going to see here there's going to be a delay between the factory. The factory, usually you want to finish this, maybe slight wait, but the factory, you want to swap it onto this tech lab and get a reactor on the starport. So a little bit of building swapping. All right, so let's go ahead and let's go back a little bit more about this build. All right, so we do build 2 more supply depots, and what you're going to do, you're going to build that, I think, around the 50 supply mark here, somewhere around in it, which is shortly after your third. Like once you get your units is going, you're going to make this orbital. You're going to make them 2 before you get your second and third barracks usually. There they go. You see around 50. I throw down 2. Then we're going to have the 2 more Hellions come out. Then we're going to move that, and that should give us a total of 8 Hellions right here. Yep, 8 Hellions. 1 Banshee's going to be out. A second Banshee's going to be on the way. So from here, the concept is barracks, and we're doing some building swapping because we want these barracks on the reactors as soon as possible, and 2 medevacs out as quickly as possible with this kind of build. And then after you get these 2 down, what you're going to do is you're going to make your 2 E-bays, and you're going to take all of your gases between the 2 bases. So you're going to go up to 4 gas directly after you do those. So basically, barracks, reactor, double E-bay, and then the rest of your gas, or add 2 more gases in from the 2 you already have. So 2 additional gases from there. All right. And then you're going to start 1-1 as soon as possible. If you don't get these gases, you're going to have trouble making 1-1, or you're going to delay like medevacs. You're going to notice this gas issue. So there we go. You see here, because the Banshee didn't start on time, with that delay, it would have been finished, and I've been able to get the factory on here and then starport from here. We're moving our third here. So the goal is time that says you won't, but when you're fully saturated on both bases, you want to move your third over. And what you're going to do to protect your third, you got Banshees and Hellions. It's going to be really good at protecting the third. From there, the only thing that can be tough is Mutalisk. And if you suspect Mutalisk, I'm not going to go over all of the scouting details because I'm trying to focus more on the core. But if it's a Mutalisk and you get an idea it's Mutalisk, or you scout really well and it feels like Mutas, you're going to have to put your turrets down as soon as possible, because there is a 2.5 base Muta, and it's going to hit hard right as your Marines are trying to come out. And that's where this factory, the starport, delaying this Banshee is going to actually hurt a little bit. And but getting the turrets down really solidifies that and helps you hold that position. Definitely after you're starting this 1-1, you want to start looking at, getting them down like round now if I needed them. From there, you'll see a lot of people not make turrets, but if you want to be safe, after you're starting 1-1, you got this production all flowing to get the Marines out. Turret, a turret if you want it in the middle or over here, and then a turret over here or like over here. However, from there you can position it based on where your army is. You don't really need it here because usually your army is going to sit right up in this zone or right up in here, most likely somewhere from there. And if it's heavy muta, then yeah, you're gonna, if you know he's going heavy on the muta, you're gonna probably want to put a turret around a production as well, or two. Especially if you're hiding around the turrets, you're gonna really need it to support your Marines. All right. And you're probably not going to see that a lot, but that is a build to be aware of. There we go. Here's my slow swap here. Make sure you keep building 2 supply depots at a time. Once you get to these 2 barracks going, you need to be building 2 nonstop, maybe even 3, because you really got to do the 2 back to back to back to back on time from there. And we're at this stage of a 3 base macro Terran. So ideally, this is the setup we want. A lot of Marines starting to come out. The Hellions here, you want the Hellions basically controlling the map along with possibly the Banshees. With the 2 Banshees, you can go harass. Once 2 are out and you know, basically if you know he's not going roaches, your Banshees can be your scouting tool. You can tell a lot more. With the first Banshee or 2, if your first Banshee comes out, I would go up the middle possibly, see if there's roach, but when your second one's about to go out, I would take it and scout, because if you're suspecting mutas, the Banshees can give you that idea that if you need to build turrets or not. You're going to lose the Banshee, which is completely fine. Your Hellions aren't going to do much, which is completely fine. From there, you're just going to use them to protect against the Lynx, so you're going to just tuck them somewhere. The key is get up the turrets, get up the Marines, and try to stabilize against it and take no economical damage. Usually if it's early mutas, he is highly invested and they don't scale well if they can't do damage when they go on, especially that early. All right. So we got the 1-1 going. You're going to see 2 more barracks come down here. So this is the trend, basically what I call there's a 3-5-8. And when I reference to that, I mean, you're going to, or 1-3-5-8. And what that means is you're going to start out with 1 barracks, 1-1-1. Then you're going to add 2 more. That gives you the 3-1-1. And then we're going to add 2 more barracks. That's going to give us the 5-1-1. Then you'll add a factory. And I'm just strictly talking about production. And after that factory, normally if you're playing super standard, you're going to make a command center for your 4th between the 3 bases somewhere. And then you're going to add 3 more barracks, which gives you an 8-2-1 production setup at that phase. That's what I call like the once you've like got everything going in your macro and your 3 bases are getting really saturated, that's what I call like the macro phase of the game. You're on 8-2-1, 8 barracks, 2 factories, 1 starport, and a TvZ from there. And 2-2 will be upgraded and going as well. Okay. All right, so let's go into, so main focus is making sure we constantly build in SCVs. We want to make sure that we're getting our bases saturated as quickly as possible. We also want to make sure I'm getting this upgrade as soon as possible. It looks like I'm a little bit late on it. Not too late, actually, I don't think. So in the build, we're going to do that. Just going to speed through some of this build. And it should be shields. I want to get that as soon as possible. It doesn't hurt to queue it up. I was slightly delayed, but not too much. But it's not one you want to delay due to a timing we're going to talk about in a minute. From there, make sure you keep building there. As I add my 4th and 5th barracks, I usually will add in my armory because your upgrades are going to be about halfway done. And you need an armory about the time they're halfway done, so it'll finish the same time that 1-1 finishes, or close to the same time 1-1 finishes. Now, what I've tried to start doing is once I take the 3rd, I try to start building my supply depots out here. Now, once you go to 4th and 5th barracks, you need to be building 3 supply depots definitely at a time. And what I'm trying to do is wall them off. Zerg loves to, while they're engaging, they will try to run in sometimes with 8 banglings into the mineral line, or as you're pushing. This right here will make it really tough, and your reinforcements will be able to kill it or that are rallied before it gets there, or it gives you enough time to respond and move the SCVs to react from there. All right, so there we go. We're going to go 2 medevacs ASAP. And then I'm going to talk more about the timing as I focus here on the build. I want to focus on it. There's that second factory coming down. We're close to the 7-minute mark. From there, this is a little bit early actually, and a mistake. The reason I say that is usually you're going to be starting 2-2 about the time I think you get the second factory down. You're going to see me, because of this, you're going to see my gas struggle. And I'm going to have to cut medevacs, or my 2-2 is going to be delayed. Something's going to happen. Something's going to have to get delayed because of this second factory. So you want to build it after you're starting your 2-2, which means about the time you're fully saturated almost on the third here. So we're going to be 3 supply depots over here. Now we're going to 2 medevacs, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a little bit.
Add-on complete.
Notice our SCV count is actually pretty good. And like I said, I can't do 2-2. You know why? Because I've actually did my factory on the wrong timing here. The other thing in this build is once you fully saturate the minerals or get close to fully saturating the minerals, you want to take your 5th gas and then start your second, or if you haven't started the second factory, you start it and then you're going to take your next gas. You want to take it once the factory is about done. But if you build that and then you take the gas behind it, that's fine. If you go widow mines, so your choices, and we're going to talk about this, your choices tanks or widow mines. You can stay on the tanks, which is really good later in the game, but early game, I'll say, like, depending on what the Zerg's playing, widow mines sometimes is better and trade more efficient. But if you're playing tanks off the second factory, you definitely want to get this gas. If you're on widow mines, you can actually ignore this gas till you decide you want to start making tanks out of 2 factories or more. So basically, if you play widow mines, you're going to be on a 5 gas Terran. If you're playing with tanks, you're going to be a 6 gas Terran from there. But yeah, in this build, so I'm delaying my 2-2. So because I got this too early, I should be going 2-2. And then I should be throwing this down after my 2-2 starts and I have my gas. All right. Easy enough. Also, if you're playing widow mines around this time frame, you will either you'll have this on a reactor and you're just playing off of it, a reactor, which is probably better. But if you went like a few tanks, some people play like 3 tanks just in case it's roaches, and once they know it's not, they go widow mines. But if you're getting the second factory down and you're about to switch to widow mines, it's not worth swapping this. Just get this upgrade and a reactor this one from there. All right, so to build, we're going to throw down, there's our 4th command center. So after you get your factory going, this is the time frame. And the only reason I did this is I'm waiting for gas here. Like I said, I would have 2-2 going. This will be going down, and then I would be throwing this down. Now, this is considered standard. There is a 3-base really hard hitting aggression where you highly delayed this, but you go up to 3 more barracks ASAP. Even before this, you could go 3 barracks, push with a lot of Marines and tank really hard, and you have to cut your Marines whenever you do want to take your 4th. But basically, you'll cut on SCVs, you're just full saturation. No gases here, usually. You'll have 4 gases, and you'll just be pure Marine tank. And you'll go 2-2 still off of it. But that's one deviation. I'm just giving a little bit of deviations. Like I said, I played the safest and most standard. Here I'm going to play tanks because I just feel it's probably works for most people in the earlier ranks. I feel like it's just going to be easier to do the tanks because once they get to lurkers, if you're on widow mines, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, possibly. Widow mines work, but you have to know exactly how to play it positionally. So now we got the 4th base. A little bit earlier. This comes around 8 minutes. But our SCV production is actually really good. And that's probably part of that is because the 2-2, like I said, the 2-2, this threw the whole build off when I did that factory. So if there's one thing, if you're writing it down instead of this, make sure you're getting these 2 upgrades to 2-2 next. The +1 on the tanks. If you're going widow mines, you will get this armor instead. And then second factory from there, and then you'll do a 4th command center. 4th command center production over all of that, and then once you add your 3 more barracks, usually I'll get this concussive shell. So basically, what you're going to do, to go back over that, 2-2, one to weapons if we're tanks, vehicle plating if we're going playing the Widowmine style, second factory, and then command center, and then 3 more barracks, and that'll put us to our full production setup into the macro phase of the game, I'll say, where the game gets really fun, or should be getting really fun. All right. 2-2 super late. We never wanted to delay 2-2. This was very, very terrible on my side from there. And that's kind of how the build goes. I'm going to fast forward here quite a bit, and I want to focus on some of the other phases. Notice here, did I forget one? No, I didn't. All right, it's down here. All right, so the rest of the barracks, so all of them are reactors, except for one. Now, there's a few different styles you can play against the Roach Ravager, but if it's Ling Bane, Muta, all of that, even against Roach Ravager, you can do this style too. It does work, but we're going to get all reactors. Basically, we'll have 4 barracks with reactors, 1 with tech lab, and then when we add the other 3 barracks, we're going to make all of those tech labs. And what that means is you're going to have 4 reactors and 4 tech labs. You're going to need that for the transitional phase. What you're going to do is going to start making more Marauders. The Banglings are going to start ramping up on the gas. There's the potential of Ultralisk, the potential of a little bit different units, and the transitional phase is to start adding in more Marauders into your army to help tank with those Lings in the Ling Bane phase, or tank more for the Banes actually in the Ling Bane phase. And that's why we start getting the concussive shield, because we're going to start pushing out more Marauders. So early army is going to look like Marines, tank, medevac. And then once you get into this phase with the tech labs, you're going to see more Marauders. You're going to start putting in a lot more Marauders. Also gives you the ability to produce out 4 ghosts at a time during the late game phase of TvZ, so on from there. So just going over that aspect, making sure. So when you have extra minerals and you're about maxed, or you just have minerals you can't spend and you feel like you're macroing well, but the minerals are high, if you messed up the build order like I did or whatever, build command centers. These are going to come in handy later on, and I'll talk about why once I land this. We're going to talk about this. So once you get this 4th kind of started and going, you're going to hit this phase, or even if you're maxed out and you just have the minerals, make command centers between some of theirs. It can help, one, create chokes. The other things is it provides additional scans. You're going to need it to clean up the creep. You're going to need it if he starts to go lurkers. You're going to need it to possibly even scout to see Hive, what units he's going from there. So the additional command centers help. If he Bane busts this one, we're at a position, and let's say this one gets Bane busted. This one should be a planetary, by the way. Only these should be the orbitals. 4th base, always planetary. But let's say he comes in and he Bane's bust or something and takes out the command center. If I got these, guess what? I just lift it, put it back here, and it's replaced. Just get my SCVs out of there, pick up, or lose it, pick this up, go over here, land it back. Completely fine. Very minimal downtime. If I have to rebuild it, that's a good amount of downtime that I'm not able to mine there. So it kind of, yeah, if they waste the Banes, it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't worth it. You wasted 20-something Banes on that to kill it, and I got my workers out of there. Pick up, land, all of a sudden it was a bad trade for him. In most scenarios, there's pinch amount of time where maybe he can try to take advantage of it, but it's very slim. Okay, so yeah, this is what the build looks like. This is the macro phase, and then basically when you get to the late game of the build, probably around the time you're starting like 3-3. However, from there you're going to add, what I like to do is go about 3 factories. I like to add an additional factory. You can add them later on and add 2 more, or however you want to do it, and then even add additional starports as well. But definitely the factories and then the starports a little bit later on. We're going to keep upgrading the weapon. So you'll do the vehicle once, maybe twice, but basically what you're going to do is at some phase, or after you complete the vehicle, you're going to probably start doing your weapons next, and that's because of how the late game phase goes. All right, so the next part is I start usually applying the ghost or getting the ghost academy after I've probably like taken my 4th, I'd say. I'd say around the time I've taken my 4th or getting it going, I start to throw down this ghost academy. I get cloak. Don't necessarily have to start adding in ghost. You can add in a few just in case. From there, you usually definitely want to have them when you start to see like the lurker. If it's ultralisk, you can get away with just marauders. That's a fine one. You can start adding a few ghosts for the snipes against the ultralisk, but I find marauders to be easier and better. If he starts making brood lords or anything to that extent, ghosts get really good. When you go into late game, you're going to start making more ghosts regardless. They're just good in general once the count gets up there from there. So yeah, that's pretty much the build. You're going to see the add of extra command centers with the minerals. And then the other thing I want to talk about is, just see the extra command centers from there. And then basically you get in this phase when you start making the ghost and liberators, you're going to start taking additional gases, of course. So once you get to that gas phase, or you start getting to the point you're making ghost, then you're going to have to start increasing your gases for sure. That's when your gas starts increasing from there. All right. Pretty straightforward, right? All right, so let's talk about the operation. So that's the build order in a nutshell. From that aspect, just at least learn going up to 8-2-1, that macro phase. And then super late game, you're going to add, some people even add up to 11 racks. I like to add more factories and more starports myself because of how the late game goes. All right, so let's talk about the tactical standpoints in this. So we got the build. Let's talk about what we're supposed to do. If we're really trying to push out the build and what we can do to alleviate some of the pain of the multitask if we're not good at it. I will say this, the build is more important and macro is more important than macroing too much or having a time. Basically, if you hit a timing and you're not macroing, you're not doing the build order correctly, it becomes an all-in and you don't want that phase to happen if you can help it. So it's better to just sit back and do the build and then hit your main timing, which is your like 2-2 timing, than it is to put on a lot of this pressure possibly. But I'm going to talk about the phase of how do we play this and what's the goals from there. So I talked about some of the early game, so I'm not going to go over the build. We're going to go to what am I supposed to be doing? Like what am I supposed to be doing with my units? What is the goal at this point in the game? And we're going to talk about that. All right, so the first Reaper, like I said, if it's hatched first, it's going to go across. And we're going to talk about what does the Reaper do when it goes across, all right? In this phase, it is attacking Lings. Now, this is the AI. Most likely, you're not going to see a hatch first and Lings meeting you out here. The AI's got, look at the amount of drones. It's just a very inefficient build altogether. From here, meaning that if I went right back home, look how many SCVs I'm ahead. Like, I'm way ahead. I don't even have to use this. If I seen a hatch first and then Lings out, I can be like, oh, this guy's a noob. Or, well, I don't like to use the term noob, but basically they're new. This is very inefficient. I'm just going to go back. Could even freaking put down a bunker and still be ahead economically here. So what are we supposed to do? If it was standard hatch first, what we're going to do, we're going to come over here with the Reaper. Like I said, don't do this stuff. If you don't, I'm going to talk about what you do if you're trying to get to a high level or you're performing really well, you're performing the build well, and you want to push it to the next to really put on the pressure. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our first Reaper. And the main idea is to see what does he have. So we're looking at a few things. One, what is coming out of the larva. So what we're going to do, you're usually going to be met with 4 Lings right off the bat. You might see 2 additional Lings come out or not. So what we're doing, we're going to macro and try to kill Lings. We're going to bounce back and forth. In this area, you can come up here and get a scout and then macro the Lings out here and then jump back down from here. But and you can get possibly some scouting here, or maybe even a little bit better idea of what's going on here. The only problem is if you're up here macroing, then you can't really get to a drone line over here as easily, in my opinion. Where over here, if the lings are going back, you're going to be able to get to the drone line a little bit earlier. But either or is fine. I've seen people do it both ways. I've seen people come up here and do it. I've seen people come down here and do it. But your focus is the scout, but also before the queens come out, you're going to put on a lot of pressure on the lings. You're going to try to kill the lings without losing your reaper. Do not lose your reaper. It's going to happen. You're going to accidentally lose it. But understand, if you lose the reaper, you lost all your scouting ability and visual of what he's doing. So what we're looking at is what's coming out. How many lings does he have? We talked about this, 4, 6. Okay, that's kind of normal. That's defensive. That's to hold off the reaper. No big deal. We wanted to try to deny a drone. If we see a drone coming out, we want to deny it, to go out there and take the third. There could already be a drone over here, and it goes down to time our reaper is just coming over here. He'll throw the hatchery down as he sees it. From that aspect, that's normal. So there's a few things we're looking for. One, we're going to micro against the lings. Once the queen comes out, that aspect's going to end instantly. There's 1 or 2 things you can do when the queen comes out. If he injects the hatchery, do not stay around the queen. Be a little bit worried about that inject, because that could be an all-in at the higher levels, but in the lower levels, it could be the person just doesn't know you're supposed to throw down a creep tumor first. So diamonds might not do it, but masters should know. Put the creep tumor down first. So when the queen comes out, we can back up, stay near the edge, get healed up, and then try to snipe the first creep tumor he puts down. Like poke in there. Do know the time he comes out, he should come over here to the edge and expect him to attempt to throw down a creep tumor. But like I said, if you catch a glimpse and he's injected a hatchery, or when you come back over here, let's say you're not seeing him throw down a creep tumor within the 10 seconds or something, or 15, then look at the energy on the queen. If it's gone, he's injected the hatchery. And then instantly go look for the third. Is there a third? At either one. If there's a third and he injected the hatchery, then, like I said, it might be slightly alarming. If there isn't a third, then I would definitely suspect a possible all-in coming. It's usually a strong sign that an all-in of some sort's coming from the Zerg at a decent level. So that's basically what we're doing. We're going to attack lings, bounce back and forth here or here, whatever, off the creep, kill some lings. If he backs the lings up too far, like here or here, what you can do, you can come around and stand, like, I don't know, maybe it's better to be over here and attack the drones, throw a grenade at them to disrupt the mining, but try to snipe a drone if he falls back too far with the lings. As he comes up with the lings, you want to take a few shots, but the goal is to come back out of here, and if he backs up, repeat back and forth. Do that. Make sure during that time frame, though, one, like I said, get the reactor before you get there, and don't do it so much that you forget to do this switch, and make sure you keep making SCVs while that happens. So even queuing them up, that's fine. During that phase, just make sure you don't miss SCV cycles. So attack the lings back and forth. If he backs too far up, we're going for drones. A drone kill is huge. We could throw a mine if we get far enough here, just to disrupt the mine and to slow them down some. And then the queen's going to come out at a certain time, and what you're going to do is when the queen comes out, we're going to back up. We're going to look for that tumor snipe, or see if he's laying a creep tumor or injecting. If we don't see the tumor come down within X amount of seconds, within the first several seconds, like after 10, I'm going to think something's up. Then check the queen, see if he's injected the hatchery, and then we're going to check for a third base. Between here, we can check for a third base. All right. Good. There is one little other thing when you get good at scouting, based on when you scout the third base and you get used to your timing. On the side of the health, you can determine by health if he skipped speed or delayed speed even more to get the hatchery before he started speed, and that gives you even more additional time before you can come back from there. And there's a good chance he's not going to do any kind of ling type all in if he does something like that, usually from there. Okay. All right, so that is the phase there, talking about the Reaper. That's what our goal is to do, is to mostly scout, figure out that, see when he's taking a third, if it's on time or if it's delayed or if he's even taking it at all. delay, kill any lings that we're able to kill, get drones. Now, if you want to simplify this, what you'll do is when he makes the 4 lings, you instantly want to bring the Reaper back and look for the third base. And then you'll come back over here and you'll look. You'll basically keep the Reaper to see what he is making. You're going to keep it right here. And the goal is you want to see how many lings he does. You want to watch the mini map, but you want to see how many lings he has. If it's 4, stays on 6 from that aspect. And not only that, you want to see if he makes roaches. If he comes out with roaches and your Reaper dies, then roaches are coming, bunker, whatever you got to do to hold it off against 2 base roach or 3 base roach, whichever from there. So you don't have to do all the fancy micro. It's better to hold it and get that scout than it is that. If you want to scout, if you sit here and you do want to scout with the Reaper, I'd say around like 2:45, the 3 minutes, you can come up here and try to get the Reaper into the main to see the building set up and get an idea of what's going on from there. Okay, that's a simplified version. You can also do that at the higher level once you have your Hellion count as well. All right, so what's the next phase? So at the higher level, the next phase is once our first 2 Hellions come out, we're going to get an idea. If we feel safe for the 2 Hellions to come out, we're going to bring them out instantly with the Reaper. And the reason why is we want to get the map control if we can. Do be wary that if you back the Reaper up and then bring the 2 Hellions in, if he slips out speedlings, he can be rerouting here and backstab you, which means you're going to need your other 2 Hellions out, and you're going to be microing just 2 Hellions. From there, you can wait for 2, keep them here with the Reaper, and then when the other 2 are about to pop out, you go out with the 2 Hellions and the Reaper. From there to get a scout, or you can go out with just the Reaper and try to get a scout of what exactly he's doing. Okay. And that's mostly for that roach time. And that first 2 Hellions and Reaper is one of the earliest times you can see the roaches. If it looks standard, one of the earliest times you can see the roaches around here and get an idea. Oh, he's going roach from here, from that aspect, and even tell if it's going to be a possible all-in behind it or not. Okay. So basically we want to grab the map control with the Hellion and Reaper if possible. Notice that the 2 do come out right before 3:30. So if you can get over there pretty quick, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on and try to keep that map control and keep a spot on them lings. All right. So here's the same. If you want to play it safe, you can keep 2 Hellions here, and as each 2 more comes out, you can add them to this to try to slow down the creep spread. So with Hellion, I would say like the first 2 Hellions and the Reaper, you're still kind of scouting, but the goal is to try to slow down creep and to keep going around the edge. You want to see how many queens he's making. Is he making a lot of queens? Is he making roaches? Does he have a lot of lings? That's the stuff you're looking for. How many drones does he have, to the third? So retaining creep, scouting, queen count is part of that scouting. From there, if he has a lot of queens, then there's a good chance he's not all in you. If you start seeing 2 queens over here, 2 queens over here, or you start seeing 3 up front, and he has some here, unless he's pulling them off to make it look like he's not. If he has 3 queens and he has 2 here, there's a good chance he's not all in you. Chances are he's creep spreading. He's fixing to play a very standard game at the early phase, or to look, basically he's not all in early on. Okay, so that's that phase. We're going to go up to that 8 Hellions from there, and we're going to talk a little bit about the phase from there. So we're going to, depending on how good your multitask is, you're going to be going back and forth, trying to reduce creep, get an idea what he has. Try not to lose the Hellions, but if we feel like that the Zerg is being really greedy and he only has queens, you can dive in with the Hellions. I would usually dive in with 4 or more. But if you feel like that, the queens are out here, and he doesn't have much anything, maybe even has just a few lings, what you could do is dive in. If he's being greedy and you dive in, you're going to be way ahead, and the goal is just to fry as many drones as you possibly can. So fry the drones, barbecue them as much as you can, and punish them for being greedy if you get that read. If you go in there, do watch out. He could have lings. The goal then is to trade out on the lings as much as possible. Don't get to firing on so many drones that you don't trade out on the lings. Make sure you trade out on the lings as much as possible, then go for the drones. From there, like if queens start coming in and you didn't kill all the lings, don't target the queens, go for the drones then. But if he has lings, they're the primary target. Unless he has like 4 or 5, then maybe it's not, it's probably always worth killing them, honestly. So take care of the lings if he does have them back here. The safe play is that Zerg's going to have like 10 lings, a little bit behind the queen somewhere to protect, anywhere from 10 to 16-ish. And if you dive in, the goal is the queens are going to have to come back, but to kill the lings and then get the drones. So don't do the drones and not the lings, because once he cleans those hellions up, it can be really bad if he has banglings behind it, or he can counter you, and it could be a little bit tough, and delay your third and so on from there. Okay. All right, so this phase is a little bit interesting. We're going to talk about this. What are we supposed to do? And I said this depends on the build here. I did do it a little bit. I could have had this Banshee earlier, which would have been better, honestly. So what you're going to do is when you have 8 Hellions and 2 Banshees, if the Zerg's playing passive, you do have a few things you can do. What you can do is, especially once you know he's not making any kind of roaches or anything like that, if he makes roaches, you're going to usually want to keep the Banshees passive or able to keep an eye on the roaches from there. But if he's Ling Bane, what you can do, or Lings, you can take the Banshees and pull the queens out of position. So basically you can take the 2 Banshees, kill drones, and then when you see like additional queens show up, because Banshee, especially with Cloak, can take out some queens. So when you see additional queens show up, you will take the 8 Hellions and you will ransack the third, or natural, or whichever you choose. You basically run into there, trade against the Lings first if he has them there, and then go for the drones. Basically, you're trading, but you're trying to pull the queens away. So queens counter your Hellions. And if he has, for example, if you don't do this, then the queens are going to be good against your Banshees and your Hellions. So the key is to force the queens back, or lower the number of queens up front. Then you get your Hellions in, get into a good position, trade against the Lings, and then target the drones. From there, basically, you're swapping the target Lings to force him to make more Lings from there. So that's the concept. If he's on Roach, then you want to probably keep your Banshee defensive. You can be around the edges and just pick at him and keep an eye on his roaches and get an idea of kind of the composition that he's doing with slight scouting. From there, just make sure you're not caught off guard and your Banshees are here and then roaches are over here, and then it's a very bad position then, and can go south very quick. Okay. All right, so moving on. From here, so our next phase in that game, as we're doing that, the next phase, and like I said, if you get Cloak, this is even stronger to do this, because a lot of times you can get a lot more drones with Cloak. If not, sometimes just straight up kill the Zerg if they're way too greedy. Okay. So the next phase in the game is what we're wanting to do. We want to get stem, combat shields, and we're going to get 2 medevacs, and then we're going to move out with Marines. So notice how all of this is following up. This is putting pressure on the Zerg from there. Now, you don't have to do the Banshee. I would recommend doing the Banshee. The Banshee's just... Queens are good against the Banshees in general. If you don't use your Banshees or you don't use the Hellions, one of the 2 can stay over here as you're doing this Marine hit or whatever, or as you're doing an early push. You can do an early push and then put the Hellions over here, and maybe even the Banshees like right here or something, or over here, or vice versa, the Hellions here and then the Banshees over here. And what that does, that covers your third for the Ling run bys and your natural as you're pushing out with, say, like a Marine and a tank or 2, or a Marine medevac. So you have that aspect. If you don't use them, they're great defensive units as well. So for example, if the guy has a lot of stuff, he's in position, and he overmade Lings, using these defensively might be a better idea, because there's a good chance you might not be able to trade very well. So having them defensive aspect, accepting that maybe you're ahead economically, is better, so you don't lose your economic advantage, because usually he's going to have to try to do something to level out that playing field. So you notice how all of these are kind of like puzzle pieces. You make a wrong decision and something can go south. You make the right decision, you can be ahead and be able to defend and put the game closer into your hands for a victory, or set yourself up for a victory. All right, so what we want to do is, once the first 2 medevacs come out, this time, like I said, it's a little bit late. What you want to do is you want to load them 2 up, just make sure you're taking 16 across, 8 for each medevac. And what you want to do, you want to start dropping them down and cleaning up creep. Or you can go harass, see if he's greedy. You know, you can drop up here or something like that, put pressure on, see if you can get some drones. It's a little bit more of a, I guess you can say, like, aggressive play. But can actually completely throw their Zerg off guard, and they can straight up die. Or you can drop them outside of here, which is a little bit more of a conservative play. And what you're going to do, you're going to push the creep back. So if the Zerg has creep, we're going to be pushing the creep back. And as the Lings come in, what we're going to do, we're going to load the medevacs up as quick as we can, or we say like Banes. Like if I get, for example, right here with the medevacs, I'm going to heal. And then as my Marines are starting to get low health, I'm going to load them all up, try not to let any die, or only 1 or 2 die. Load up the medevacs, boost away, and then drop them here, let them heal, and then repeat from there. If he has Banes, you just shoot the Lings, and as he gets onto the army or the Banes get close, you load up, you back up, rinse, and repeat. And what this is going to do, this is going to give you efficient trades from there. So usually it takes 1 or 2 things is going to happen. 1, you're going to make a mistake, and that's how you trade inefficient. Or 2, he's going to have Mutalisk at some point, and this isn't going to work anymore, and that's fine. From there, if that happens, that's not the biggest deal. Mutas are very expensive. From there, so you kind of know it's that scouting ability. You're denying creep, you're scouting, you're seeing what he's playing. From there, so yeah, it gives you a lot of ability, and it helps control the creep. Scouting ability to control the creep. Marines are very cheap. The goal is really not to lose the medevacs if you can help it, but at the same time trade well, because you can actually just trade really well during that phase from that aspect. So he has to do 1 of 2 things. Either he accepts that you're just going to keep trading well for a little bit until he gets Hydralisk or whatever Lings from that aspect, or until he gets Muta. Or he gets Queens, or however. Yeah, he's just got to accept the fact that he's going to trade rough there for a little while, and usually the Bane count's going to be a little bit lower at that phase. All right, so let's get to the mid game part. Let's talk a little bit about that from that aspect. So let's say we're here, we got 2 more medevacs out, kind of starting 2-2. We got the 4th going. So here we have only 1 medevac. Should have been 2 more, I think. Did I only get 1 out? No, I got 2 more. I got another one somewhere. Might be on its way. There it is. So from this aspect, there's a few things you can do. You can add these all 4 up and try to push here. But at some point, what you're going to want to do is, playing this at the higher level where your multitask is good. Once again, the easy way is to keep all of this back, like even the Hellions, the 8 Hellions, 2 Banshees. Yeah, you keep the Hellions back. Maybe you scout with the Banshees to make it easier on yourself. Or you keep it all back and you just scan if you don't have the multitask, and then adjust accordingly. But at the higher level, or if you're trying to perform it as efficient and as best way possible, you're going to basically take this. Like I said, you might combine these 2 temporarily, but basically at some point, especially when the Zerg is solidifying his 4th and possibly trying to get a 5th, you're going to be playing 2 sides of the map. and you're going to be splitting your bio units, not necessarily the tanks. You can keep the tanks defensive, but what you're going to do is you're going to be splitting your bio units. With mines, this works great. And the reason why is mines are more mobile, easier to split. Tanks split is not very good. They're better in a big push. So if you end up going tanks, you're going to probably want to keep them defensive until you do that big push. From there, so what you're going to do, you're going to split up your medevacs and bio, and you're going to have one on this side of the map, and you're going to have another on this side of the map. And what you're going to do, you're going to zone out the creep, and you're going to trade decent, and you're going to pick up and back up, or you're going to back up off the creep. Basically, you engage. If the Zerg does not split, let's say he fully has all his units here. Best case scenario, you can get them all in a medevac, back up, drop them here, and you can push into here and possibly get drones or snipe a hatchery. And Lings are a lot faster than Banes, and so are Mutas. So if they get there, you're going to be able to kill a lot of those before the Banes even get there to clean it up well from there. So yeah, you can snipe hatcheries, zone out the creep, really consolidate his bases, because Zerg, if you look at maps, they have to span out wide. So if you're zoning it out here and here, that's good. Now you could say, well, what if they run through the middle? Well, you have tanks defensive if you went tanks. From there, the problem with a Zerg going out up the middle is if your armies are over here, it's easy to concave onto them. You basically would like arrow to here, arrow to here. It's going to be really hard for him to escape. Honestly, he would have to hit here and then go right back out of the middle. That's not easy to do, right? He would have to hit here. Maybe he gets very little damage and then he's going to back right back up, because he needs to get back before you get into like this zone or in this zone over here. Because if he gets to this zone, if he's going here, you can say, oh, I'm going to stem. I'm going to catch you between here, you know, and choke you out. If he goes out this way, well, guess what? This army is going to come here. If he goes out this way, then this army will go down here. From there, so it's a little bit risky. Took me a little while to kind of understand some of that concept, but looking at it directionally and positionally, going up the middle for Zerg is risky. Now, can they do some run-bys with it? Yeah, that's fine. That's why you have a few Widow Mines. Your rallies will be there. If you're going tanks, you probably won't have to worry too much about it. You'll have your tanks kind of spread out, and your reinforcements with a little bit will help a ton for them run-bys if he tries to send like 12 Lings up the middle. From there, so that's like the mid phase of the game. We're going to split those up. We're going to keep hitting those bases. We're going to pick up. We're going to micro as good as we are. We're going to try to trade a lot better. As an army dies, we'll regain it here. We're going to split up and we're going to do the same. And you can choose to grow it or keep it a certain size. And then once you get to 2-2, maybe you just do a big push from there. You can do that while, if you want to add a drop in there if things are going well. You can really split the Zerg, and it's hard for Zerg to split his units. Zerg trades better when all his units are together. So if you not only are eliminating bases, you cause him to split his units, then it's going to be better for you. Zerg loves to be able to surround Terran. If he's splitting his units, it's a lot harder to surround him and get the Bane connections that he needs. Now, you do this against Ling Bane. If it's Roach Ravager, you don't do this. You're doing one big push, honestly, usually. You're going to do drops, but you're mostly going to have one big army. So, usually going on, I guess, with what you're going to see the most against a Zerg. All right? From that aspect. So, that's what you're going to be doing till at least you get to 2-2. If things are going well, you can even keep doing that at 2-2. So, that's the second phase of... From there, there's the Ling, there's that. There's the first phase with the medevac. If you think the Zerg's being greedy, you can take your first 2 tanks with the first 2 medevacs and push across as well from there. So, yeah, there's a few options. But if you want to play it safe, you don't want to push, you think the Zerg's playing well, he's not being greedy, he's got a lot of units, then you just do this medevac stuff. All right, so what's the next phase? The next phase is your 2-2. When you get 2-2, that is a great time for Terran to consider a big push. Because what you're going to do, you're going to have 2-2. You should be nearly maxed. You should have great unit count. You should be good. The one thing you want to know is he going hive or not? So if you have to scan, if he's going hive, then you definitely want to probably consider pushing. It's a great time to trade before his hive units really come in to play. If he isn't going hive, honestly, you can probably still sit back and you're still good. You can actually sit back till he tries to go hive, and then you kind of want to get in the phase where you trade in before the hive units come out from there. So you can technically just sit back, trade out your units, make your unit set up better as long as he's on layer from there. Now you can move out even with him on layer. From there, if you sit back and you're defensive and good bases, you're controlling them well, and you get up to 3-3, it's going to be really hard for him to win there. So, yeah, I mean, you can win off a layer tech, but remember they're going to be stuck on 2-2. If he's going hive, I highly recommend you pushing out at 2-2 before his hive units come into play. If he's on layer, it's up to you. You can push, or you can basically keep harassing him. I would consider pushing, especially if he starts getting a lot of bases, because once he gets into that hive, he's going to be able to really push out a lot of units. So I would recommend pushing, swapping to better units, even if he isn't, to deal with what he's got. Now, the good thing is, if he's not on hive, you really don't have to have ghost. You can use liberators to harass, but even then, you can use liberators to be defensive and then harass as your number gets decent. But ghost, you can kind of almost ignore, except if you want to use them against infestors, the EMP. Okay. So from there, that kind of explains that. That's the main part of it. But let's talk about the composition style of super late game. How do we play the late game against Zerg? Notice you're going to throw down, of course, extra command centers. You're going to make, so your first 3 command centers usually should be orbitals. Your 4th will be a planetary. And every base from there ideally will be a planetary. If he Bane busts it, and you're making these orbitals for the scans and to be able to drop the mules, then what you'll do, you'll pick it up and you'll replace it. And yes, it'll be an orbital then. And then maybe you make a planetary here. The key to that is to minimize the downtime of the base. Zergs were very infamous about willing to throw away the 24, 25 banglings just to kill the planetary, to cut the economic part of Terran out. But if you have these and you're just lifting and replacing it, it's only a 20-second downtime or less than that, depending on where it is. Just the amount of time it takes to lift it, drop it, and if you get your SCVs out. So the key is to save your SCVs. Planetary dies, no big deal. Pick up, put it down the orbitals that you're building additionals of from there. So, and that's when you start getting the late game. As you get in the late game phase, you're going to have the extra minerals. Of course, as things happen, you're going to put down command centers and make them into orbitals. You're going to have extra command centers. The ones you're going to move and make planetaries, you'll make them as you need them, like out to here and out to here. But you want to make these orbitals, have the extra orbitals for scans. You'll really need it against lurkers. As they come into play, you're going to need the extra scans. Not only that, it's going to give you great scouting ability, the ability to clean up creep a lot easier, because you're going to have almost infinite scans once you get enough orbitals. And then not only that, you can throw away some SCVs and make your late game army even better. So ideally, it's a great late game setup. All right, so let's fast forward. Let's talk about a unit composition and not make this too long, but I'm trying to explain everything. So the main thing is to get the build, but then this will be the phase Terran can actually handle Zerg late game for sure from there. So let's say, and most of the time by a game like this, you're going to be losing a lot of your Banshees, a lot of Marines are going to be down. You're going to go into the next phase with basically like a Marauder, heavier army along with the Marines and tanks. If you go Widow Mines, you're going to have to look out for that lurker tech. And when that lurker tech comes, you're going to it's easier to be on the tanks. Now, you can do it with Widow Mines as well, and a heavier ghost count and bio. But I find tanks for most people is easier. If you want to be Maru and Clem and them, then yeah, you can do it off of Widow Mines. But if you want to take the easier route out, having the tanks is definitely completely fine with Ghost. It's going to be easier to defend the lurkers. It does make the Vipers a little bit stronger, where the bio movement makes the Vipers weaker, but at the same time, it kind of makes the lurkers stronger, but not necessarily if you have good control. So, I mean, theoretically on paper, Widowmine and higher ghost count is better against the lurkers, where tanks are just necessarily, it's just easier. It requires a lot less micro and a little bit more room for error, but can be countered slightly easier for Zerg. Because what they're going to do, they can abduct the tanks into the lurkers, or throw, for ones that are clumped like this, they can throw the cloud down. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the army composition, which I think I do in this game. We're going to see me start killing some stuff. Let's talk about the phases. So phases here is basically, we're going to get into the later part of the game, and what we're going to start adding in is Ghost. Ghost is going to be that. They're decent against, they're great against the lurkers. They're great against infestors. They're great against broodlords. They're great against the corruptors. Corruptors just are very tanky, but the ghosts do really good against them. They're great against even the queens. And they're really great when an army is retreating for Zerg. It's really great at taking care of that and making them, punishing them really hard for it. Especially along with tanks from there. So basically you spread your tanks out, you're going to use your ghost and snipe, and it's a very solid defense. Ghosts are pretty good. Even they're even kind of tanky against the Banes, but the counter is like a fungal and Bane in some methods, but you can cloak them. They're good against that. You can back up, cloak from there, and split against the Banes and still do decent. I mean, the tanks are really good against Banes, so splitting a ghost is good too. Just going to take a lot of Bane hits. It's going to lose a lot of Banes. All right, so what the phase is after that, so if you're going this tank, you're going to go, you're going to start at some point adding in Liberators from this. So you're going to start adding in these Liberators. Now, basically, the main depth of your army will be Ghost, tank, and then Liberator will be added in at some point, and then from there, you will basically add in Thors as you start to suspect Broodlords, or you want to be able to deal with Broodlords. Like Ghost Thor is really strong, but at the same time, you got to be careful of the ground aspect as well. But it's nearly tank, Liberator, Ghost is pretty much unbeatable by Zerg ground. They have to, and not even, I'll be honest, not even Mutalisk are going to be able to do it. It's going to take Broodlords, and then that's when you have to answer with the Thors. You can try Vikings, but Thors are very ideal because they trade on the ground still really well from there. So let's talk about that. So what can you do? So when you have this and you get into this late game, your defensive setup is more simpler than what people really usually think. So most of your defensive setup is going to be on the outside of your bases. For example, notice I have these planetaries. I like to put the planetaries in these bigger chokes you might use too late game. We're wanting to zone this out, and this makes it impossible for Zerg. Zerg cannot come in without taking a ton of damage. It's nearly really hard for the Zerg to trade really bad unless he catches us making a mistake and he makes a really good play. From there, but what you want is one planetary in these small chokes, like there. We could put one probably even here, two here, because you see how big this gap is, or yeah, probably right here. You see how big that gap is here. So we're going to put two there. Notice I'm putting sensor towers. I'm putting two turrets in case he does try to go Mutalisk or something. One here, and then I think we're going to put the orbital right here. You can put an orbital beside them to help choke them up. Some of these chokes are going to require two on maps. Some of them one. Like here, I can put one planetary here. And put a planetary here, one here. So if I put planetary here, and then I got this one here, and I got some turrets, I can kind of keep the most of my army shifted slightly to the right, and not worry as much about these. So use planetaries to zone out some of these. This map has a lot of zones. Some of them are going to be simpler than this. So you look at these key attack paths for Zerg here, here at this phase, here, here. Is there one up in the middle? There is. The problem with going up the middle is going to be scary because, one, your army is usually going to be positioned in the middle. But if he splits you off or you're at one of these positions and then he tries to hit up the middle, it's easy to cut him off and trap him inside of your base from there, because then it becomes a very risky attack that can go really bad for him. Where he attacks the sides, he can get out with his units easier. All right. So basically that's kind of what we do. You could do this turtle up style late game, trade really well. We've got Ghost. They're going to trade good against everything just about Zerg can throw at us. And all we got to do is just make sure we're paying attention, scanning, and adding the Thors. Usually the Broodlords at this point is the thing that can throw you off in most cases. You know, and the Lurkers here, can the Lurkers kill these? Yes. You scan, you'll trade still half decent. But what it does, it buy times and it zones out the Zerg. So if I'm fighting a big battle here and he comes over with 5 Lurkers over here to try and engage, or a lot of Lings, guess what? Not going to happen, Jose. I can keep my entire army like focused on your big part of your army. So it gives us the positional advantage from there. So defensive wise, going back, I almost forgot. Going back, how you should be setting up defensively. So what you'll do, you'll set up the outside bases. Maybe I use like 2 Liberators to help protect this, and maybe 3 to 4 tanks. I'm going to split a few tanks, maybe 3. Like I said, 3 here, maybe 4. There's 2 planetaries, so really 3 is really going to be really strong. And that'll give me time to get there. And the same over on this side. So here we're going to do that. Here we're going to do that. And here we could put possibly like 2, I don't know, right here. We're going to be pretty close. And we're going to kind of keep our army a little bit centralized here. A little bit centralized from there. And then, so basically the Zerg's going to most likely hit here or here. He's going to come over here. Could be possibly, you know, there is this path here, but we're going to put a planetary, and this is a really tough choke from there. And that's going to give us time to respond and get to position quick enough. So 2 Liberators over here, you know, 3 tanks over here to help protect this one, the same one. I'm not investing my entire army, and the rest of my army can be mobile up in this area, which is going to protect these zones easily. I can get in position based on the towers. And here he's going to trade really tough to just try to break this. And then I'm going to be able to get over there and punish it, and then just replace it as needed. From there, you'll be surprised at how well that goes with such a small amount of units. And then you keep the Ghost always mobile, and then the rest of the units mobile for wherever he commits. You basically can trade him out from there, or trap him from there. So that's how your defensive ideas should be roughly set up like. Your Ghost, now you can leave those while pushing. After he does an attack, you can push. You can push while nuking one area. Nuke's a good way to put massive damage with just one unit harassing, like a Ghost, without committing a big positional forfeit, and while pushing this side. And you can leave the defenses. But what I like to do, if I'm pushing this side of Zerg, I like to unsiege these positions, like take these units here and go here. And what I'll do is I might have my rally here, and I'll leave these over here. I'll leave these over here unless I just see he threw away everything and I think I can push everything to win. So you'll unsiege, you know, the 2 Liberators, the 3 tanks with my entire army, and I'll go up here, get them together, and then push up here. And then I keep these here to help defend, because if he counterattacks, usually they're going to go this way. They're not likely to counterattack here and then come around. If they do, my army's right here. I can just come right on back and trap his army. So it's kind of risky. So think about that, like as that standpoint. And if I'm pushing over here, obviously I leave those here, the few tanks or the 3 to 4 tanks and the 2 Liberators, and then I unsiege these and I use it to push up. And then I'll have my rally of units, you know, up the middle or something like that, in case he tries to do a run by here at the same time from that aspect. Or you can rally here if you want to. But I mean, the only place, like I said, that's open is here. And if I'm pushing, I can trap him, you know, basically come in and trap him if he comes through the middle. So just think about it a little bit positionally there. And we can use that army. And that's pretty much it. You want to get all your upgrades the plating, even the ship weapons. Every upgrade with Terran is possible, except maybe the Raven energy and so on from there. You will drop your medevac count when you get to the higher ghost count. Like when you have the bio, the Marines, and Marauders, that's fine. You're going to be stemming. Ghosts don't stem, so you don't need as many medevacs to heal them. You're going to probably want about 4 at the most. Here you can see I got about 6. That's pretty good for this unit composition. Here, notice we're just abusing the snipe on the there, and this can be a scary. Well, this is still kind of the midish phase going into the late phase. You can see I'm heavier in the Marauders. And here I'm about to kill some. We're going to show some of the composition. So after talking about it, we're going to look at it. You're going to see I'm producing Ghost, Tanks, Liberator. And what we're mainly keeping an eye on is, with this kind of army, I feel like you can defend anything. The one thing we're keeping our army on is, or eye on, is how we're sieged up in our positioning. And then if he's going Broodlords. That's the only other one. You can put up more turrets at each one. Don't be scared to do that. In case of mutas. Mutas can be good and they're hard to chase, but honestly, once your Liberator count gets up, even mutas, like, you can unsiege them and split your army to the outside and go with the Liberators to take care of the Mutalisk. Once Liberators get in a high enough number, the Mutalisk it's going to be scary for them. But you can put, turrets if you need to in some of these outside areas, like, 4 or 5 on the sides to cover as needed to zone out, and then your army in the middle can control the middle. How many times you see, how many times you see Zerg very late game go mutas? It's usually rare unless they're super behind. And yeah, they gonna get damage or GG. Alright, so what you're going to do, you're always abusing the snipes. Here, you're going to see me. I'm going to start to set up this defensive setup to give you an idea. Oh, there we go. I already have it. So look at there, 2 Liberators. We've got several tanks, 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice they're split. Do not clump them together. If he comes through here, he's going to push with Hydralisk, possibly Ling Bane. If they're together, the Lings are going to do a lot better than they should, so you spread them. You're going to be surprised at how many units it takes to kill this. Even if he comes in with Ultralisk, you're going to be surprised at how decently well you actually trade because of the Liberators and so on from there. So, Broodlords, like if you look here, Broodlords is the only thing that isn't protected against. If he does jump in with Mutas, yeah, he can possibly wipe out this side because we didn't add in turrets. We can add in a few as needed as well. But if we get to him with the Ghost, I mean, he's going to lose all the Mutas very quickly. And here I could put, probably don't need that many, but put what you need. And you're just going to move back and forth with your tanks and Ghost. The Ghost is the main mobility aspect for you. And they're going to aid to whichever side the Zerg's trying to hit. And notice with the sensor towers, I will be able to get in position even quicker from there. So that's kind of what the late game kind of composition is going to look like. And this is a very tough army for Zerg to beat. They actually complain about this army. The other thing is, once you get into this phase where it's late game and you got all these extra orbitals, throw away your SCVs. You need to drop down to probably about 50 SCVs, honestly. You can drop down to 60 and then 50 and then, even 48 or whatever, however you need to. But if you're unsure and you're looking for a decent number, I'd say like maybe 50-ish is fine. Depending on your money, you can drop even lower than that. And mules, because you're just going to have a ton of mules. Basically, you save for scan. If your energy's full, you're going to drop a few mules. But your scans, you should be scanning, cleaning up creep, finding position of his army, seeing what he's going composition-wise. It's nearly impossible for him to hide the composition from you with that many scans. So here we go. We're going to do a nuke. Notice nuke on this side while we position our army on this side. From here, and you could pressure to something like this once he's thrown away an army. And you're doing that. When you notice, we're going to spread our tanks even as we're going aggressive here. You can go forward with the Liberators, or you can put the Liberators right on top of the tanks, the siege circle kind of around them. But to be honest, if the Zerg comes up, let's say it comes up over here with Ultras or something, your Ghosts are going to be able to come over here and snipe a lot of this stuff. Yeah, the 2 tanks going to die, but he's going to take heavy snipe damage possibly. Whatever you do, don't get too far out with your Ghosts. If you can help it. Every time you move forward, you kind of want to be having your tanks and Liberators move forward with you slowly. You're just using the little tanks and Liberators, yeah, to support and give your Ghost the coverage that they need. And yeah, so your engagements kind of look something similar to that as you're on there aggressive. Notice like I said, I could take, like, when I was on this side, I could have took these and been fine. And left these if I wanted to add a little bit more depth or hit firepower to my army as far as tanks and Liberators go. Alright, so we're going to just push here. Notice I'm sniping. You're going to lose a lot of snipes. Snipes is your big damage dealer on the bigger units, though. It's fine to have a few Marines as well to deal with the Lings. Of course, here I kill my tanks, and let's just say we're starting to see, like, Broodlords, maybe some air units, more air units. Our compositions should start having some Thors in it, and what we're going to do, we're going to keep maybe about 5 tanks. Maybe about 5 tanks. And what we do, we can leave those defensive. We can have 2 to 3 here, and even 6, and then 3 here, and then 2 Liberator, and use my Ghost and Thors to go back and forth and track. Really, if he has too many Broodlords, chances are his Broodlords are very slow. So we don't have to technically siege on here unless he has enough that he can just kill it. Or over here, if he has too many Broodlords, we're going to be able to follow him and get in position pretty quickly because we're going to be more mobile than the Broodlords for sure. So you're going to see I kill my own tanks. We're going to look more at this composition, and we're going to start seeing more Thors. I don't like taking tanks completely out, but even if you do, it's still a strong composition. It's just because snipes are pretty dang good. But I feel like yeah, Hydralisk can get really good without the tanks as well, if you're not careful. There, we're just messing around. Notice we're over here. We just sniped. Notice how he went to there, pull back, go back on there, and rinse and repeat. And there's our Thor count. Now what you want to do is make sure your Thors are in high impact mode. There's nothing, the only time, I would say the only time that they should not be in high impact mode is if you're going against Mutalisk. If you're going against Broodlords, you need to have the high impact mode on. If you do not, you're in trouble. So what you want to do is, the key against Broodlord is to protect the Thors. Your Ghosts are going to be behind them. Your Liberator is going to be sieged around them, or maybe in front of them, depending on what units they have. And the tanks, you'll probably want to remain unsieged unless he pushes forward, then you'll siege, or you siege kind of behind them a little bit. From there, just be careful of sieging your tanks. But basically, you're zoning out the Broodlords to keep their Broodlings down and count. The Ghosts are going to help you a lot with that. And as you clear out the bottom, and you can push forward with the Ghost, you can also go in and snipe, or you catch a good position, you can snipe along with the Thors, and the Broodlords are going to fall very fast from that aspect. And then your Liberators, depending on what's going on, like I said, most of the time you're going to siege them to zone them out, but if he's on pure Broodlords and Corruptor, then you wouldn't even want to consider sieging them, of course. Just make sure you remake them, because yeah, if he changes composition, they could come really in handy. Yeah, that's a scary army. That's pretty much what it is to it. You can split the map and play defensive, and as long as you trade better, you're gonna win. then when he trades bad, you can move out with a little bit, cut out his bases, and back up and repeat if you want to play like super conservative and safe. But yeah, this army composition is very scary and really good. The main thing is knowing when to get the Thors in there. Thor Ghost Liberator is just incredible. I still like having a few tanks in there because I like the depth of that splash with them, along with the Ghost Snipes. It's just a high amount of DPS and a solid force that just makes it tough for Zerg to catch you off guard. I played this as Zerg. I played against it. It is not easy, especially with planetaries, for them to get behind some of these areas. It's not easy. You're constantly throwing your units away, hoping to break this Terran, or hoping to get the one great fungal to reset the ghost count, or reset something that you can get in there and do something from there. So if you don't, you get fungled and all your ghost dies, it can get a little bit tough till you get more out. But yeah, as long as you play it right, it's really, really tough for Zerg from there. But that does it for this video. Hopefully this shows you how to play TvZ. This very long video, but it's very in-depth. And I'm wanting to give great concept behind it, but hopefully this helps you out. If you want to play the easier style, like I say, you take out the harass side of things. You don't do the drop. And what you do, you can do a little bit of dropping, because you'll if you get good, you're going to max out, but you don't have to push out with all of that stuff. You mainly need to push out certain time, and it's just to scout. But play conservative, do this siege stuff kind of set up, and then when you have 2-2, that's the time to consider if you will need to do a big push or not, and pre-split. If it's bangs, basically you will get 2-2, or a little bit before 2-2, we're going to scan. Does he got hive or not? If he has hive, all right, let's do our 2-2 max push. From there, we want to do it about 9 to 10 minutes earlier, the better. From there, if it's not hive, it's up to you. But still, usually maxed out, you're going to be good, but you can sit back to 3-3. You're not only time clock technically until he starts getting hive, to where it's going to be a unit composition battle, or a battle for you to get to the composition to be able to defend his burst of his hive units. From there, do know if he sits back on layer longer and he's mining a lot of gas, he can have a big burst, because he'll have the gas bank of hive units instead of like 3 to 4 Ultralists just showing up. It can be, all right, he battles here, he throws everything out, and all of a sudden 10 Ultralists pop out and 8 lurkers or something to that extent. But that does it. Hopefully this video helps you guys out. Thanks.